Welcome to Mystery Nights Theatre. Tonight, we venture into the glittering world of London high society, where beneath the polish of aristocratic elegance lurks something far more sinister. Our tale finds the renowned Belgian detective Hercule Poirot and his loyal companion Captain Hastings amid the excitement of Coronation season, when all of London sparkles with anticipation and danger. Join us for Death Wears a Crown, a tale of jealousy, betrayal, and long-buried secrets, crafted in homage to the masterful Agatha Christie, whose genius we honor, though this mystery unfolds on our own terms. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from tonight? Your presence illuminates our journey through these shadowed mysteries. Now, let the story unfold. Chapter 1. The Summons. The morning sun struggled through the London fog as I, Captain Arthur Hastings, descended the stairs of our Whitehaven Mansions flat to find my friend Hercule Poirot already immaculately dressed, his patent leather shoes gleaming like mirrors. "Ah, bon matin, Hastings," he exclaimed, adjusting one of his shirt cuffs by precisely 2 millimeters. "Today brings us something most intriguing, I think." "Indeed." I helped myself to coffee from the sideboard. "Have we a case?" "Perhaps." Poirot's egg-shaped head tilted as he examined an elaborate cream envelope that lay beside his tisane. "Lady Pemberton requests our presence at her Belgravia residence. Most urgent," she writes. Lady Pemberton, even I knew that name. One of society's grandest dames, her annual coronation ball was legendary, especially significant this year with the recent ascension of our new monarch. "She mentions," Poirot continued, his fingers drumming thoughtfully, "a matter of delicate concern regarding her grandson, Lord Adrian Pemberton, and the upcoming festivities." Within the hour, we found ourselves outside an imposing Georgian townhouse in Eaton Square. The butler who admitted us moved with the practiced silence of old money, leading us through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors to a morning room where Lady Pemberton waited. She was a formidable woman of 70, her silver hair arranged in perfect waves, her bearing regal despite the worry lines etched around her pale blue eyes. Her fingers twisted a handkerchief, the only sign of distress in her otherwise composed demeanor. "Monsieur Poirot," she began without preamble, "I require discretion and swift action. My coronation ball is in 3 days. I have reason to believe someone intends to destroy everything." Poirot's mustache twitched with interest. "Destroy, madame. This is a strong word." "I have received this." She produced a letter from her escritoire, written in block capitals. "The crown you worship will fall. Old sins cast long shadows. 3 days until justice." "Most dramatic," I observed. "Have you contacted Scotland Yard?" Lady Pemberton's jaw tightened. "Impossible. The scandal—" "You don't understand, Captain Hastings. This concerns my late son, Harold, Adrian's father. He died 23 years ago in India. The official report claimed fever, but there were whispers." "Whispers, madame?" Poirot leaned forward. "That Harold was involved in something unsavory, missing regimental funds. A fellow officer, Captain James Worthing, died the same week, supposedly by his own hand. The matter was hushed up, but Captain Worthing left a widow and daughter. They returned to England in disgrace, vanished into obscurity." "And you believe this threat relates to those events?" "Who else would write of old sins? Adrian knows nothing of this shadow on his father's memory. He's to announce his engagement at the ball, to Miss Catherine Ashford, a perfect match. If this scandal emerges now—" She faltered. Poirot rose, straightening his waistcoat. "Madame, Hercule Poirot will attend your ball. We shall observe, we shall protect, and we shall uncover the truth. But first, I must have the complete guest list." Lady Pemberton rang for her secretary, a mousy woman named Miss Barton, who appeared with remarkable speed, as if she'd been hovering outside. "The guest list, Miss Barton," Lady Pemberton commanded. As Miss Barton fetched the required document, I noticed how her hands trembled slightly, how her eyes darted between Poirot and her employer. Nervous temperament, I supposed. The list was extensive, over 200 names comprising the cream of society. Poirot's finger traced down the columns, pausing occasionally. The Duke and Duchess of Marlborough, Sir Reginald Foster, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. He stopped. This Mrs. Vance, she is? A widow, Lady Pemberton replied. Respectable, though not quite top drawer. She manages the Coronation Charity Committee. Quite indispensable, really. She arranged the commemorative wine for the toasts, a special vintage from the royal suppliers. Ah! Poirot's eyes gleamed. And she has attended your balls before? For 5 years now. Adrian insisted. She helped his friend out of some difficulty. A kind woman, if rather intense. Intense, madame? Lady Pemberton frowned. She has these moments where she stares, particularly at Adrian. I've attributed it to maternal interest, as she has no children of her own. Poirot pocketed the list. We shall attend, madame. Meanwhile, speak of this to no one. Continue preparations normally. As we departed, I noticed a figure watching from an upper window, a young man with dark hair and troubled eyes. Lord Adrian Pemberton, I presumed. Well, Poirot, I said as we walked back through Belgravia, what do you make of it? I make of it, mon ami, that the past is like water. It always finds its level. Someone has waited 23 years for revenge. The little grey cells. They tell me this person has been close all along, watching, planning. You suspect someone already? I suspect everyone and no one. But observe, Lady Pemberton speaks of a widow who disappeared. Yet on her guest list appears another widow, Mrs. Vance, who shows unusual interest in the family. He adjusted his tie-pin thoughtfully. It is curious, no? Surely it cannot be that simple. Simple? Ah, Hastings. Revenge nurtured for decades is never simple. It is a poison that transforms the soul. We must discover who has been drinking from that bitter cup. That evening, Poirot made several telephone calls, his voice low and rapid in French. I caught mentions of India, military records, and Worthing. Research, mon ami, he explained. The truth lies buried in the past. We must exhume it carefully. The next morning brought another development. Miss Barton appeared at our flat, her colourless face even paler than before. Monsieur Poirot, forgive the intrusion, but something else has arrived. She produced another note. The toast will be bitter. The crown will fall with its wearer. This was found? Poirot inquired. In the wine cellar, beside the commemorative cases. The butler found it this morning. Poirot's expression sharpened. Who has access to the cellar? The butler, the staff, and Mrs. Vance. She personally inspected the wine delivery yesterday. Most interesting. Tell me, Miss Barton, how long have you been with Lady Pemberton? 7 years, monsieur. And before? She hesitated. I worked for a family in Brighton, the Weatherbys. I see. Thank you, mademoiselle. Please inform Lady Pemberton we shall arrive early to the ball. After she left, Poirot turned to me. The pieces begin to form a pattern, Hastings. Someone with access, someone trusted, someone who has waited patiently. Tomorrow night, at the Coronation Ball, the waiting ends. You think someone will attempt murder? I'm certain of it. The question is not if, but who will wear the crown of victim, and who has appointed themselves judge and executioner. Chapter 2. The Coronation Ball. The following evening, London society descended upon the Pemberton townhouse like peacocks in full display. From our strategic position near the ballroom entrance, Poirot and I observed the arrival of 200 of England's finest, their jewels catching the light from the magnificent chandeliers. Lady Pemberton stood receiving guests with practiced grace, Lord Adrian at her side. The young man, perhaps 30, with intelligent eyes and his grandmother's firm jaw, showed no sign of worry, though I noticed how his gaze swept the room periodically, as if searching for danger. Ah, Poirot murmured. Observe who arrives now. Mrs. Eleanor Vance entered alone, dressed in deep purple silk that complemented her auburn hair. She was perhaps 50, handsome rather than beautiful, with an erect carriage that suggested pride or defiance. Her eyes, I noticed, were a striking green, and they fixed immediately upon Lord Adrian with an intensity that made me understand Lady Pemberton's discomfort. "She watches him like a hawk," I whispered. "Or a mother," Poirot replied thoughtfully. "Note how her expression softens when he smiles." Mrs. Vance approached the receiving line. "Lady Pemberton, Lord Adrian, how magnificent everything looks." "All you're doing with the committee, Eleanor," Lady Pemberton replied with cool politeness. "The commemorative wine has arrived safely?" "Perfect condition. The toast at midnight will be unforgettable." Something flickered in Mrs. Vance's eyes. 23 years since a coronation. Such a long time to wait. Lord Adrian kissed her hand gallantly. "You've outdone yourself, Mrs. Vance. Catherine will be so pleased. She should arrive any moment." A shadow crossed Mrs. Vance's face. "Miss Ashford, yes, your fiancé. How fortunate you are." As she moved into the ballroom, Poirot touched my arm. "Come, Hastings, we must inspect these famous wine arrangements." The butler, Jennings, led us to a side chamber where cases of wine stood ready. Each bottle bore a special label. Coronation, vintage, 1937. Long live the king. "The regular wine for dinner," Jennings explained, "and these special bottles for the midnight toast." Mrs. Vance insisted each bottle be marked with table numbers to ensure every guest receives the commemorative vintage. Poirot examined several bottles, his fingers delicate. "Most organized, and Mrs. Vance supervised this personally?" "Yesterday afternoon, sir. Very particular about it." "Bon, no one must touch these bottles until midnight. You understand?" Jennings nodded, though clearly puzzled by the authority this small foreign gentleman wielded. We returned to find the ballroom transformed into a swirl of color and music. Miss Catherine Ashford had arrived, a lovely blonde girl of 25, whose radiant smile dimmed slightly when Mrs. Vance approached her. "My dear Catherine," Mrs. Vance said, her tone honeyed, "how beautiful you look. Adrian is fortunate indeed, though one wonders if you truly know the family you're joining." "I know Adrian," Catherine replied with quiet dignity. "That's enough." "Is it? Family histories have such a way of resurfacing." Before Catherine could respond, Lord Adrian appeared, steering his fiancée toward the dance floor with a protective arm. Mrs. Vance watched them go, her hands clenching her evening bag. "Most interesting body language," Poirot observed. "She fights for control." At dinner, we were seated where we could observe the principal players. Lord Adrian's table included his fiancée, his grandmother, and several cousins, the Weatherby brothers, Hugh and Martin, both hoping to benefit from Lady Pemberton's fortune. Mrs. Vance sat at an adjacent table, her placement allowing her to watch Lord Adrian throughout the meal. I noticed she barely touched her food, sipping only water while others enjoyed the excellent wines. "Staying sober for the midnight toast," I suggested to Poirot. "Or ensuring she misses nothing," he replied. "See how she watches the servants, the wine service? She knows something will happen." At 11:45, Lady Pemberton rose. "Ladies and gentlemen, in 15 minutes we shall toast our new sovereign. Please gather in the ballroom." The crowd moved excitedly toward the ballroom, where footmen stood ready with trays of the commemorative wine. Mrs. Vance positioned herself near the terrace doors, I thought perhaps for air, as the room was warm. Miss Barton appeared at Lady Pemberton's elbow. "My lady, everything is prepared." "Thank you, Barton." Lady Pemberton's voice held strain. "Once this toast is done—" She didn't finish, but her meaning was clear. She expected the threatened disaster to occur now. Lord Adrian took his place beside his grandmother, Catherine, at his other side. He raised his voice. "Friends, we gather tonight not only to celebrate a new reign, but to announce that Miss Catherine Ashford has done me the honor of accepting my proposal of marriage." Applause rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Vance stood frozen, her face draining of color. "No," she whispered, though only those nearest heard. "Not yet. Not her." The footmen circulated with remarkable efficiency, ensuring each guest received a glass. I noticed Mrs. Vance accepted hers but didn't raise it to her lips, her green eyes fixed on Lord Adrian with an expression of absolute despair. "Mes amis," Poirot said quietly, "observe the distribution pattern." The head footman was working his way toward the principal family members with a special tray, crystal glasses that sparkled more brilliantly than the others. The family receives special glasses, I noted. Précisément. And who arranged this detail? Before I could answer, midnight struck. Lord Adrian raised his glass high. To His Majesty the King, long may he reign. The King! The crowd echoed. Lord Adrian brought the glass to his lips. Non! Poirot's voice cut through the celebration like a knife. Lord Adrian, do not drink. No one must drink. The room froze. Lord Adrian's glass remained suspended inches from his mouth. Lady Pemberton's voice was sharp with fear and anger. Monsieur Poirot, what is the meaning of this? The meaning, madame, is attempted murder. Poirot moved through the crowd, which parted before him like the Red Sea. The commemorative wine, it is poisoned, but not all of it. Only specific glasses intended for specific victims. Mrs. Vance swayed on her feet. You can't know that. You can't possibly. But I do know, madame, just as I know who you really are. She bolted for the terrace doors, but Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, whom Poirot had evidently summoned earlier, blocked her path with 2 constables. Going somewhere, Mrs. Vance? Japp inquired mildly. Eleanor Vance, Poirot announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. Or should I say, Eleanor Worthing? Gasps erupted. Lady Pemberton gripped her grandson's arm. Captain James Worthing's widow, Poirot continued, who disappeared 23 years ago with a young daughter after her husband's death in India. A death officially ruled suicide, but which was, in fact, murder. You're mad, Mrs. Vance said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Your husband discovered that Harold Pemberton was embezzling regimental funds. He confronted him, and Harold killed him, staging it as suicide. You knew the truth but could prove nothing. So you waited, planned, and finally positioned yourself to take revenge. Lord Adrian stepped forward, his face pale. My father was a murderer? I fear so, mon ami. But he paid for his crime with his own life. The fever that killed him, it was not fever, was it, Mrs. Vance? You had your revenge 23 years ago. Mrs. Vance's composure cracked entirely. He destroyed everything. James's reputation, our lives. My daughter grew up in shame, believed her father a coward and thief. She died last year, never knowing the truth. So you decided Lord Adrian must pay for his father's sins? Not just pay, understand. Feel what I felt. His engagement announcement tonight, his happiness, I couldn't bear it. Yes, I poisoned the wine meant for him. Let him die at his moment of greatest joy as my joy died. She pulled a small vial from her evening bag. Before anyone could stop her, she drank its contents in one swift motion. No! Lord Adrian lunged forward, catching her as she collapsed. She looked up at him, her green eyes, so like his own, I realized with a shock, filling with tears. You have your father's face, she whispered, but perhaps not his heart. Dr. Pembroke pushed through the crowd, but even as he knelt beside her, we could see it was too late. Eleanor Worthing. Vance died looking at the son of the man who'd destroyed her life, her expression finally peaceful. Chapter 3. Scotland Yard arrives. The ballroom remained frozen in shocked silence as Dr. Pembroke closed Eleanor Vance's eyes. Lady Pemberton stood rigid, her face marble white, while Lord Adrian remained kneeling beside the body, his expression unreadable. Clear the room, if you please, Inspector Japp commanded. This is now a crime scene. The guests departed in hushed clusters, the celebration transformed into tragedy. Only the family, Poirot, myself, and Miss Barton remained, along with the police. Well, Poirot, Japp said, removing his notebook, seems straightforward enough. Woman confessed before witnesses, then took her own life. Case closed. Ah, mon ami Japp, Poirot said softly, his eyes not leaving the body. But which case? The murder that happened tonight, or the one 23 years ago? She didn't murder anyone tonight, Japp pointed out. You stopped her. Did I? Poirot moved to the abandoned tray of special glasses. Tell me, Inspector, If Mrs. Vance intended to poison Lord Adrian, why prepare multiple special glasses? Why not just one? Japp frowned. Perhaps she wasn't sure which he'd take. None. The head footman knew exactly whom to serve. The distribution was precise. Poirot lifted one of the crystal glasses, examining it against the light. And consider, Mrs. Vance took poison from her evening bag. A woman planning to escape after murder does not carry her own death with her. Lord Adrian stood slowly. You're saying she always intended to die tonight? I believe so, yes. But the question remains, was she acting alone? Lady Pemberton spoke for the first time since the revelation. Surely you're not suggesting someone else was involved? She confessed. To killing your son 23 years ago, we. To planning tonight's attempted poisoning, we. But observe. Poirot gestured to Miss Barton, who had been standing in the shadows. Mademoiselle, you are very quiet. Miss Barton started. I'm simply shocked, Monsieur Poirot. To think Mrs. Vance was... that she... You worked for the Weatherby family in Brighton, you told me. Yet the Weatherby brothers are here tonight as Lady Pemberton's nephews. Curious you did not mention this connection. Hugh Weatherby, the elder brother, stepped forward. He was a florid man of 45 who'd clearly enjoyed the evening's wines. What are you implying? Barton came to Aunt Pemberton with excellent references. References from you, perhaps? Poirot's moustache twitched. And tell me, what was your reaction when Lord Adrian announced his engagement? Delighted, naturally, Hugh said, though his brother Martin shifted uncomfortably. Even though it means the certainty of an heir, ending any hope of inheriting the Pemberton fortune. How dare you? Martin Weatherby burst out. He was younger, thinner, with the hungry look of a man living beyond his means. We're family. Family who stand to gain considerably if Lord Adrian dies without issue, Poirot observed. Inspector, I suggest you test all the special glasses. You may find surprises. While Japp directed his constables to secure the evidence, Poirot walked slowly around the room, his eyes taking in every detail. He paused at the terrace doors. Mrs. Vance stood here during the toast. Why? Not for air. The doors remained closed. She positioned herself to watch something, or someone. The family, I suggested. She wanted to see Lord Adrian die. Perhaps, or perhaps she waited for another signal. Poirot turned to Miss Barton. You were standing beside Lady Pemberton. Your hand was on her arm, to comfort or to prevent her from drinking. Miss Barton's face crumbled. She's been kind to me. I couldn't let her. Barton, Lady Pemberton gasped. What are you saying? The secretary began to weep. I'm sorry, my lady. So sorry. But she said no one would be hurt, just frightened. She said Lord Adrian needed to know the truth about his father, that it was justice. She? Japp demanded. Mrs. Vance? Yes. She knew I needed money, my mother's medical bills. She offered me £500 just to ensure the special glasses went to the right people and to make sure Lady Pemberton didn't drink. But Lady Pemberton wasn't the target, I protested. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Wasn't she? Miss Barton, tell us exactly what Mrs. Vance said. She said the sins of the fathers must be paid, but the innocent shouldn't suffer. Lady Pemberton was innocent, just as her daughter was. Her daughter? Lord Adrian's voice was sharp. Mrs. Vance's daughter. Catherine, Miss Barton whispered. The room erupted. Catherine Ashford, who had been silent in her corner, stepped forward with remarkable composure. Yes, she said quietly. Eleanor Vance was my mother. Lord Adrian stared at his fiancée in horror. You knew? All this time? No. Catherine's composure cracked. I didn't know she was my mother until last month. I was raised by an aunt, told my parents died when I was infant. Then mother appeared, told me everything. About my real father, James Worthing, about your father's crimes. And yet, you accepted my proposal? Lord Adrian's voice was bitter. Because I love you, Catherine cried. I told mother I wouldn't be part of her revenge. That's why she had to act tonight, before we married, before I became a Pemberton and betrayed my father's memory. Poirot nodded slowly. So Mrs. Vance had multiple purposes. Revenge on Lord Adrian, yes, but also to prevent her daughter from marrying into the family that destroyed hers. The poisoned wine was meant for Lord Adrian alone, but she needed Miss Barton to ensure Lady Pemberton, whom she saw as another victim, didn't accidentally drink. But wait, Jap interjected. If only Lord Adrian's glass was poisoned, how could she be sure he'd get the right one? Because, Poirot lifted the glass again, observe the tiny mark on the base, a small A etched in the crystal. Miss Barton, you ensured this glass reached Lord Adrian? Miss Barton nodded miserably. The head footman was told which tray to take to the family. I made sure Lord Adrian's glass was positioned correctly. Then you're an accomplice to attempted murder, Jap declared. No, Inspector. To conspiracy, perhaps, but the poison… Poirot sniffed the glass delicately. There is no poison here. What? Multiple voices exclaimed simultaneously. Mrs. Vance never intended to kill Lord Adrian. This was theatre, a grand revelation to destroy an engagement and expose old sins. The poison she drank was real, her escape from a world where her daughter would marry her enemy's son. But the wine? Harmless. To demonstrate, Poirot took a sip from Lord Adrian's glass. Several people gasped, but he merely smiled. Excellent vintage, nothing more. Then why the elaborate deception? Lady Pemberton demanded. To ensure maximum drama, maximum pain, to force the truth into the open. Mrs. Vance knew Poirot would stop the toast. She counted on it. The great detective preventing a murder that was never meant to happen, forcing her to confess before everyone, revealing the Pemberton family's dark secret at the moment of their greatest social triumph. Catherine sank into a chair. She orchestrated everything. Even my meeting Adrian last year at the charity function. She arranged that too, didn't she? I fear so, mademoiselle. She wanted you close to the family, though I believe her feelings became conflicted when genuine affection developed. Lord Adrian moved toward Catherine, then stopped. How can I trust anything now? How do I know what's real? You know I tried to stop her, Catherine said quietly. I chose you over her revenge. The sins of the fathers, Poirot murmured. They poison everything they touch, no? Mrs. Vance spent 23 years planning this moment, only to find her daughter's heart had betrayed the plan. Inspector Japp closed his notebook with a snap. Right then. Miss Barton, you're under arrest for conspiracy. Miss Ashford, you'll need to provide a full statement. Lord Adrian, Lady Pemberton, my condolences for this whole horrible business. As the police led Miss Barton away, she turned to Lady Pemberton. I'm sorry, my lady, but she was right about one thing. The truth needed to come out. The secrets were poisoning everything anyway. Chapter 4. Secrets of the Peerage. The morning after the disastrous ball found Poirot and me in Lady Pemberton's morning room, where the family had gathered in what appeared to be a council of war. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken recriminations. Lord Adrian stood by the window, his back to his fiancée, or former fiancée, as their status remained unclear. Catherine sat pale but composed near the fireplace, while Lady Pemberton occupied her usual chair like a queen on a damaged throne. The Weatherby brothers were present too, Hugh nursing what appeared to be a substantial hangover, while Martin fidgeted with his watch chain. I've asked you here, Lady Pemberton began, her voice steady despite the dark circles beneath her eyes, because we must decide how to proceed. The scandal is already in every drawing room in London, Hugh interrupted. My club was buzzing with it at breakfast. Then we face it with dignity, Lady Pemberton replied sharply. The question is Miss Ashford's position. I haven't withdrawn my proposal, Lord Adrian said quietly, still facing the window. If Catherine still wishes… How touching, Martin Weatherby sneered. Marrying the daughter of your father's victim. The papers will feast on that. Enough! Lady Pemberton's voice cracked like a whip. Monsieur Poirot, you've been very quiet. I observe, madame. The little grey cells, they work best in silence. Poirot rose from his chair, beginning his characteristic pacing. But tell me, Lord Adrian, yesterday you received something, did you not? Before the ball. Adrian turned, surprised. How did you… Yes, a package, but it contained only an old photograph. May we see it? Adrian retrieved a sepia photograph from his jacket. It showed two young officers in Indian military dress, arms around each other's. shoulders, smiling at the camera. One was clearly Harold Pemberton, the other, presumably, James Worthing. "Friends," Poirot murmured. "Before it all went wrong, where did this come from?" "No return address, just London postmark." Catherine gasped softly. "Mother had that photograph. I saw it in her things once. She said it was all she had left of happier times." "So Mrs. Vance sent this before the ball. Why?" Poirot turned the photograph over. Written on the back in faded ink, "Harold and James, Simla, 1913, brothers in all but blood." "She wanted me to know they were friends once," Adrian said heavily, "to make the betrayal worse." "Or," Poirot suggested gently, "to show that hatred was not the only truth. Even in revenge, she remembered love." A knock interrupted us. Jennings entered, his usual composure shaken. "My lady, Inspector Japp has returned. He insists on speaking with everyone." Japp entered, looking grimmer than I'd ever seen him. "We've been analyzing the evidence from last night. Miss Barton has been very helpful." "That treacherous—" Hugh began. "Careful, Mr. Weatherby," Japp warned. "Miss Barton's information has revealed something unexpected. She says Mrs. Vance gave her very specific instructions about the wine distribution. Not just Lord Adrian's glass, but others too." "What others?" Lady Pemberton demanded. "Yours, for one, and both Weatherby brothers." Martin jumped to his feet. "That's absurd. Why would she—" "Sit down, Mr. Weatherby." Japp's tone brooked no argument. "Miss Barton says Mrs. Vance discovered something about your finances, something that connected to events 23 years ago." Hugh's florid face went pale. "I don't know what you mean," Poirot intervened smoothly. "Perhaps I can assist. The Weatherby family fortune, it has recovered remarkably in recent years, has it not? After near bankruptcy in 1914? Father was a clever investor," Martin said defensively. "Indeed. Yet the recovery began very specifically in late 1914, just after Harold Pemberton's death in India. Most curious timing." Lady Pemberton's voice was ice. "What are you suggesting?" "I suggest, madame, that your nephew's father received a substantial sum from your late son, payment, perhaps, for silence about the embezzled funds." "That's slander," Hugh blustered. "No, it is deduction. Mrs. Vance, she was thorough in her research. 23 years she had to investigate. She discovered that Geoffrey Weatherby, your father, served briefly in India. He knew about Harold's embezzlement because Harold asked him to help hide the money." "Even if that were true," Martin said carefully, "we were children. We knew nothing." "But you benefit still from that blood money, non? This is why Mrs. Vance included you in her plan. The sins of the fathers, they spread like poison through generations." Catherine spoke unexpectedly. "Mother kept records, detailed records. She showed them to me, bank transfers, letters. The Weatherby fortune was built on the regiment's stolen funds." Both brothers turned on her viciously, but Lord Adrian stepped between them. "Enough. Haven't we had enough secrets and lies?" "Indeed," Poirot agreed, "but we have not yet reached the deepest truth. Inspector, what else did Miss Barton reveal?" Japp consulted his notes. "She mentioned something odd. Said Mrs. Vance was very concerned about some coronation ceremony 23 years ago. Kept asking about what happened at the 1914 coronation ball." "There was no coronation in 1914, I pointed out." "Exactly," Japp agreed. "But Lady Pemberton held a ball that year anyway, celebrating the king's birthday, and something happened that night." All eyes turned to Lady Pemberton, who had gone very still. "Grandmère?" Adrian prompted. "It was when Harold announced his engagement to your mother," she said slowly. "June 1914, just before he left for India. There was an incident." "What kind of incident?" Poirot asked gently. "A young woman made a scene, claimed Harold had compromised her, promised marriage. Security removed her. We thought her mad. Harold didn't even know her name." "But perhaps," Poirot suggested, "Harold knew her better than you thought. What was this woman's name?" I don't recall. Eleanor something." "Eleanor Worthing," Catherine said quietly. "My mother. She was in love with your son before she married my father." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. The triangle becomes clear. Eleanor loved Harold. Harold rejected her for a better match. She married his best friend James on the rebound. Then Harold, posted to the same regiment, embezzled funds and killed James when discovered. The betrayal was triple. Friend, husband, and first love all in one man. Lord Adrian sank into a chair. So father destroyed her life completely. And she spent 23 years planning the perfect revenge, Poirot continued. Not just to kill, but to recreate that night. A coronation ball, an engagement announcement, a revelation of truth. History repeating, but this time with her controlling the outcome. Except, Catherine said softly, tears running down her face, I fell in love with Adrian genuinely. I ruined her symmetry. Lady Pemberton rose shakily. I need to know, was my son truly a murderer? Poirot withdrew a telegram from his pocket. I had my friend investigate the Indian military records. Captain James Worthing died of a gunshot wound, officially self-inflicted. But the angle was wrong for suicide. The powder burns suggested struggle, and Harold Pemberton had scratches on his hands when he reported finding the body. Dear God, Lady Pemberton aged 10 years in that moment. But there is more, Poirot continued. The embezzled funds, they were recovered, mysteriously found after both men's deaths, all but £10,000. The amount the Weatherbys received, Martin said hollowly. Précisément. Your father helped Harold hide it, took his cut, and kept silent when Harold murdered James and then was murdered himself by Eleanor. Hugh stood abruptly. We're leaving. Come, Martin. I think not, Inspector Japp said. Questions remain about your involvement in last night's conspiracy. We knew nothing about the poisoning plot, Hugh protested. Perhaps not, Poirot agreed. But you knew Miss Barton was vulnerable, in debt. Did you perhaps suggest to Mrs. Vance that she could be turned? Did you hope Lord Adrian's death would restore your inheritance prospects? Martin cracked. It wasn't like that. We just mentioned Barton needed money. We didn't know what Eleanor planned. But you suspected something would happen at the ball, Poirot pressed. That's why you made sure to attend, despite your estrangement from Lady Pemberton. Prove it, Hugh said flatly. The proof, Poirot said, lies in what Mrs. Vance didn't do. She marked glasses for you both, yes, but Miss Barton was instructed to ensure you didn't drink. You were to witness, not die. She wanted you to see justice done to the family that profited from murder. Japp stepped forward. Hugh and Martin Weatherby, I'm arresting you on suspicion of conspiracy to commit fraud. The financial crimes your father committed may be beyond prosecution, but your knowledge and continued benefit from those crimes is not. As the brothers were led away, protesting, Lady Pemberton spoke once more. Catherine, despite everything, you tried to stop this. That speaks to character. Catherine looked up hopefully. But, Lady Pemberton continued, I cannot bless a union built on such foundations. The past poisons everything it touches. Grandmère, Adrian began. No, Miss Ashford bears no blame for her parents' sins, but neither can I welcome her as your bride. The shadow is too dark, the wounds too fresh. Chapter 5. The Missing Jewel. 2 days passed. The newspapers gorged themselves on the Pemberton scandal, each edition bringing fresh revelations and speculation. Poirot and I had returned to Whitehaven Mansions, the case apparently concluded, the Weatherby brothers in custody, Miss Barton awaiting trial, and Mrs. Vance buried quietly in an unmarked grave. Yet my friend remained restless. He paced our sitting room, rearranging objects with obsessive precision, his brow furrowed in thought. Something troubles you, I observed over breakfast. Everything troubles me, Hastings. He abandoned his tisane, which was most unlike him. The little grey cells, they protest. There is a wrongness to this case that I cannot identify. But surely it's solved. Mrs. Vance confessed. The conspirators are arrested. She confessed to poisoning Harold Pemberton 23 years ago. She confessed to planning last night's spectacle. But consider, mon ami, why did she choose this specific moment? Lord Adrian has attended dozens of social events. Why the coronation ball? Symmetry, you said. recreating the 1914 incident. May we, but... There is more. Something we have missed. He seized his coat. Come, Hastings. We return to Eaton Square. Lady Pemberton received us in her private study, a room I had not previously seen. Unlike the formal elegance of the rest of the house, this space was intimate, cluttered with personal mementos and family photographs. Monsieur Poirot, I thought the matter concluded. Nearly, madame, but I must ask, the Dorrington crown, where is it kept? Lady Pemberton's eyes widened. How do you know about that? I know many things. The Dorrington crown is a family heirloom, non? A ceremonial piece worn by Pemberton brides for 3 centuries. It was to be worn by Miss Ashford at her wedding. Was, yes. Given the circumstances, there will be no wedding. But the crown itself, may I see it? Lady Pemberton hesitated, then led us to a concealed safe behind a portrait of her late husband. She worked the combination with practiced fingers and swung open the heavy door. Inside lay velvet cases, document boxes, and an ornate wooden chest. Lady Pemberton opened the chest and gasped. It's gone! Where the crown should have rested, only empty velvet remained. A folded note lay in its place. Poirot retrieved it with his handkerchief. The crown returns to its rightful owner. Some debts cannot be paid in blood. Mrs. Vance? Lady Pemberton breathed. She took it. When was the safe last opened? Poirot asked. 3 days ago. I showed Catherine the crown, explained its history. She was so happy. Lady Pemberton's voice broke. Who else has the combination? Only myself and Adrian. And Miss Barton, for practical purposes. She files important documents. Miss Barton. Poirot's eyes gleamed. She had access to the safe. She could have taken the crown at Mrs. Vance's instruction. But why? The crown is valuable, certainly, but not extraordinarily so. Its worth is sentimental. Précisément, madame. Sentimental worth. Tell me of its history. Lady Pemberton sank into a chair. The Dorrington crown was created in 1620 for the first Lady Pemberton. Every bride since has worn it. But during the Indian years, Harold, he had it with him. His wife wore it at their wedding in Simla. Simla, I repeated, where Harold and James Worthing served together. Yes, after Harold's death, the crown was returned with his effects. My daughter-in-law, Adrian's mother, wore it at her wedding to Harold. She married him just before he left for India. She died giving birth to Adrian. The crown has remained in this safe ever since. Poirot was very still. So, Mrs. Worthing, Eleanor, would have seen this crown. At the wedding where her former love married another woman. At the ceremonies in Simla where she was the wife of his best friend. I suppose so. And now it is gone, taken by a woman who spent 23 years planning revenge. Poirot turned to me. Hastings, we must visit Miss Barton in custody. Within the hour, we sat across from the former secretary in a grim interview room at Scotland Yard. She looked diminished without her neat attire, her eyes red from weeping. The crown, Miss Barton, Poirot began without preamble. Where is it? She flinched. I don't. Please, do not waste our time with denials. Mrs. Vance instructed you to take it. We know this. The question is where you put it. Miss Barton's shoulders sagged. She wanted it for the ceremony. What ceremony? The one she planned after. After everything was revealed. She had a ritual in mind, she said. Burning the crown, destroying the symbol of the family that destroyed hers. But I couldn't do it. You kept the crown? I hid it. I knew she was going to die. She told me as much, said she wouldn't see another sunrise. I thought, perhaps if I kept the crown, some good could come from all this. It's worth enough to pay my mother's medical bills 10 times over. So you intended to sell it? No, I mean, I considered it, but... She broke down sobbing. I don't know what I intended. Everything happened so fast. She was kind to me, treated me like a daughter. I didn't understand until too late what she really wanted. Where is the crown now, Miss Barton? My lodgings, under a loose floorboard in my bedroom. I was going to return it, I swear. Poirot nodded to Jap, who waited outside. The inspector will retrieve it. But tell me, Mrs. Vance spoke of ritual. Did she mention anything else? Another purpose for the crown beyond destruction? Miss Barton wiped her eyes. She said the crown held secrets, that things were hidden inside it, things that would prove everything. I thought she was being dramatic. Hidden inside the crown, Poirot murmured. Fascinating. We waited while Japp's men retrieved the stolen heirloom. When they returned, Poirot examined the Dorrington crown with the reverence of a man handling sacred relics. It was beautiful, a delicate circlet of gold set with pearls and small diamonds designed to complement a bridal veil. But Poirot's interest lay not in its beauty. The craftsmanship is exquisite, he observed, but observe, Hastings, this section here. He indicated a raised portion decorated with an elaborate family crest. It is slightly different from the rest. Newer metalwork, perhaps a repair. Using a small tool from his pocket, Poirot carefully pried at the crest. It lifted away, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a tightly folded paper, yellowed with age. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed, unfolding it carefully. It was a letter, written in a shaky hand. My dearest Eleanor, if you find this, I am dead, and Harold has succeeded in his treachery. The evidence of his theft is with the regimental bank, sealed in my name, account number 7743. I have also written to Colonel Morrison, though I fear Harold will intercept it. I know you loved him once. Perhaps you love him still. But he is not the man we believed. He killed Sergeant Williams to cover the first embezzlement, and will kill me too, if I cannot reach the Colonel first. Know that I loved you truly, even knowing your heart was divided. Care for our daughter. Tell her someday that her father was not a coward or a thief, whatever lies Harold spreads. Yours eternally, James. James Worthing's last letter, I said softly. He hid it in the crown. The crown Eleanor would have seen at Harold's wedding. He gambled that she would one day find it, even if he died. Poirot's voice held rare emotion. He was right, but it took 23 years. So, Mrs. Vance knew about this letter. She must have discovered it years ago. Perhaps that was the catalyst for her final plan. Proof at last that her husband was innocent, that Harold was the true villain, but proof hidden in a Pemberton heirloom, inaccessible without elaborate planning. She needed the ball, the chaos, to get access to the safe, I realized. Précisément. But something went wrong. Miss Barton took the crown but kept it hidden, never delivering it. Mrs. Vance died without the satisfaction of revealing this letter publicly. The tragedy compounds, I murmured. Indeed, but this letter… Poirot held it up thoughtfully. It changes much. James Worthing mentions Colonel Morrison. If he wrote to the Colonel, perhaps that letter still exists in military archives. After 23 years? Military bureaucracy, Hastings, is remarkably thorough. Nothing is ever truly lost. His eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. We must investigate further. This case is not yet complete. But Mrs. Vance is dead. The conspirators are caught. What remains? Justice, mon ami. True justice. James Worthing's name has been stained for over 2 decades. His daughter grew up in shame. Eleanor Vance, Eleanor Worthing, died believing the truth would never emerge fully. But Hercule Poirot, he does not leave such matters unfinished. As we left Scotland Yard, the Crown safely in police custody, I felt the weight of everything we had uncovered. 3 generations of lies, betrayal, and murder, all stemming from one man's greed. Poirot, I ventured, do you think Lord Adrian and Catherine might find their way back to each other, despite everything? He was quiet for a long moment. Love, Hastings, is both the greatest healer and the most dangerous poison. They must decide for themselves whether the past will define their future. And Lady Pemberton? Will she ever accept the truth about her son? That, mon ami, is the cruelest question of all. To learn that one's child was a monster, it is a wound that never heals. But perhaps, in time, she will find peace in knowing the truth, however painful. The fog was lifting over London as we walked, sunlight breaking through in pale ribbons. Somewhere in the city, the Weatherby brothers waited in cells, their family's stolen fortune crumbling. Miss Barton faced judgment for her misguided loyalty. And, in a quiet cemetery, Eleanor Worthing rested at last, her long revenge complete, yet somehow incomplete. Tomorrow, Poirot announced, we visit the War Office. The ghost of James Worthing deserves to speak. Chapter 6. Truth Behind the Crown. The War Office on Whitehall presented an imposing facade of imperial bureaucracy. Poirot and I arrived promptly at 10, armed with letters of introduction from Inspector Japp and the weight of a 23-year-old mystery. A harried clerk led us through endless corridors lined with filing cabinets before depositing us in the office of Major Geoffrey Thornton, Keeper of Indian Military Records. Monsieur Poirot, Major Thornton said, rising to shake hands. He was a lean man with sharp eyes and a military bearing softened by years behind a desk. Inspector Japp's telegram was most intriguing. The Worthing Pemberton affair, you say? Indeed, Major. We seek any correspondence from Captain James Worthing in late 1914, particularly letters addressed to Colonel Morrison of the 4th Bengal Lancers. Thornton's eyebrows rose. That's specific? You understand, records from that period are complicated. The war began shortly after, much was lost or misfiled. Nevertheless, I must try. A man's honor depends upon it. Something in Poirot's tone moved the Major. He nodded slowly. Wait here. I'll see what can be found. Nearly an hour passed. I occupied myself studying the portraits of distinguished officers lining the walls, while Poirot sat motionless, his eyes half closed in that peculiar state of concentrated thought I knew so well. At last, Thornton returned, carrying a dusty folder tied with faded ribbon. Remarkable, he said, settling behind his desk. The letter exists. It was logged as received on September 3rd, 1914, addressed to Colonel Morrison, but marked undelivered, recipient deceased. The colonel died of fever on August 28th, you see. The letter was filed and forgotten. May I? Poirot extended his hand. The letter was written in the same hand as the one hidden in the crown, but steadier, more formal. Colonel Morrison, I write with grave urgency concerning Lieutenant Harold Pemberton of our regiment. I have discovered evidence of systematic embezzlement from regimental funds spanning 18 months, totaling approximately £12,000. More disturbing, I have reason to believe Lieutenant Pemberton responsible for the death of Sergeant Thomas Williams last April. Williams served as quartermaster and likely discovered the theft. His death, ruled accidental, occurred under suspicious circumstances. I have confronted Pemberton privately. He denies everything but has grown erratic in behavior. I fear for my own safety should he realize I intend to report this matter formally. The evidence is secured in a sealed account at the regimental bank under my name, number 7743. I have also hidden secondary proof in a location known to my wife should the worst occur. I trust your discretion and await your guidance on how to proceed. Your obedient servant, Captain James Worthing. 12th August 1914. 12 days before his death, I murmured, and 3 weeks before the colonel received it. Too late. Poirot's voice was heavy. The bureaucracy of empire, it failed Captain Worthing utterly. Major Thornton cleared his throat. There's more. After receiving this, I took the liberty of checking related files. The regimental bank account mentioned, 7743, was indeed in Worthing's name. It was closed in October 1914, the contents transferred to the regiment's general fund. But the officer who authorized the transfer... Harold Pemberton, Poirot finished. Lieutenant Pemberton, yes. He claimed Worthing had instructed him to handle it before his death. The evidence, whatever it was, vanished into general accounts. And Sergeant Williams's death? Thornton produced another document. The official report states he fell from his horse during night exercises, but I found an unofficial notation in the medical officer's log. Williams had a head wound inconsistent with a fall. The physician was overruled by superior officers who wanted no scandal. Poirot stood abruptly, pacing the small office. So Harold Pemberton killed at least twice, Sergeant Williams and Captain Worthing, and embezzled £12,000, a portion of which funded the Weatherby family fortune. He was himself murdered by Eleanor Worthing in revenge, and through all of this, the innocent suffered while the guilty prospered. Until now, I added. Until now. Poirot turned to Thornton. Major, these documents, they can be used to officially exonerate Captain Worthing? With the War Office's cooperation, yes. The case can be reopened, the record corrected. It won't bring him back, but his daughter, if she lives, would have her father's name cleared. She lives, Poirot said quietly. And she must be told. We returned to Eaton Square that afternoon, but not to Lady Pemberton. Instead, we sought Catherine Ashford at her modest flat in Kensington, where she had retreated after the ball's disastrous conclusion. She received us in a small sitting room, her face pale but composed. The grief of losing her mother, even a mother she had barely known, showed in the shadows beneath her eyes. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings. She gestured to worn but comfortable chairs. I wondered if you would come. You expected us, mademoiselle? I expected someone. Mother left. Loose ends. She always did. Poirot withdrew the 2 letters, James Worthing's hidden message and his formal report to Colonel Morrison. These belong to you, I think. Your father's last words. Catherine's hands trembled as she read. Tears spilled silently down her cheeks, but when she looked up, her expression held something like peace. He loved her. Even knowing she still cared for Harold, he loved her. He loved you both, Poirot corrected gently. His final thoughts were for your protection, your future. He hid the truth in the crown, trusting your mother would find it. And she did, eventually. Catherine folded the letters carefully. She showed me the crown letter a month ago. That's when she told me everything. Who she really was, what Harold Pemberton had done, her plan for the ball. You tried to dissuade her. I begged her, told her revenge wouldn't bring father back, wouldn't restore our family. But she was beyond reason. 23 years of hatred had consumed everything else. Not everything, mademoiselle. She ensured Miss Barton would protect Lady Pemberton. She sent Lord Adrian the photograph of happier times. Even in revenge, fragments of love remained. Catherine laughed bitterly. Love? What good is love now? Adrian won't see me. Lady Pemberton has forbidden the match. I'm the daughter of a murderess and the granddaughter of nothing. My family name was always a lie. Your family name, Poirot said firmly, was Worthing. Captain James Worthing, a man of honor who died trying to expose corruption. This is your heritage, mademoiselle, not your mother's vengeance, but your father's integrity. The War Office will reopen his case, I added. His name will be cleared officially. For the first time, genuine hope flickered in Catherine's eyes. Truly. Truly. And there is another matter we must discuss. Poirot leaned forward. Your engagement to Lord Adrian, do you still wish it? It doesn't matter what I wish. The family has been built on lies for 23 years. Perhaps it is time for truth to build something new. Poirot rose. Come with us, mademoiselle. There is one more gathering required. The library of the Pemberton townhouse was arranged as it had been for the fateful ball, chairs positioned in a semicircle, the principal players assembled. Lady Pemberton sat rigid in her usual throne-like chair, Lord Adrian beside her. Inspector Japp stood near the door, his constables discreetly positioned. Miss Barton had been brought from custody, her wrists unshackled, but her freedom clearly conditional. The Weatherby brothers remained in cells, their presence unnecessary. Catherine entered last, and I saw Adrian's sharp intake of breath, his immediate move toward her, arrested by his grandmother's restraining hand. Monsieur Poirot, Lady Pemberton said coldly, I agreed to this gathering because Inspector Japp insisted, but I fail to see what more can be said. Much more, madame. Poirot took his position before the fireplace, the familiar stance of revelation. We have spoken of crimes and confessions, of revenge and conspiracy, but we have not yet spoken of the complete truth, and without complete truth there can be no justice. He produced the letters, laying them on the table. Captain James Worthing wrote to Colonel Morrison on August 12, 1914, detailing Harold Pemberton's embezzlement and suspected murder of Sergeant Williams. The colonel died before receiving it. The letter was filed and forgotten for 23 years. Lady Pemberton's face was stone, but her hands gripped the chair arms. "Your son, madam, was not merely a thief. He was a double murderer, Sergeant Williams and Captain Worthing. He betrayed his regiment, his friend, and his own honor. These are facts, documented in military records that will now be made public." "You have no right." "I have every right. Justice has been denied too long." Poirot's voice sharpened. "Eleanor Worthing spent her life in shadow because your family's influence buried the truth. Her daughter grew up believing her father a coward. The Weatherby family built their fortune on blood money. And you, madame, you knew." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I suspected," Lady Pemberton whispered. "Harold was always troubled. When he died so suddenly after James Worthing, I wondered, but I couldn't. He was my son." "So you chose silence. You allowed Captain Worthing's reputation to be destroyed. You welcomed the Weatherbys despite knowing their wealth was tainted. You built this family's future on a foundation of lies." Adrian stood abruptly. "Grandmère, is this true?" Lady Pemberton's composure finally cracked. Tears streamed down her weathered face. "I was protecting you, Adrian. Protecting our name, our position. What good would the truth have done? Harold was dead. Nothing could change that." "Everything could have changed." Adrian's voice rose. "Catherine's mother wouldn't have spent her life planning revenge. The Worthing family wouldn't have lived in disgrace. Catherine—" He turned to her, anguish naked on his face. "Your whole life might have been different." "But it wasn't," Catherine said quietly. "And we can't change the past, only the future." Poirot nodded approvingly. "Précisément, mademoiselle. This is the wisdom that escaped your mother." He turned back to Lady Pemberton. "Madame, you have a choice now. Continue the lies, perpetuate the silence, or finally, after 23 years, allow truth its voice. What would you have me do? Support the War Office investigation, allow Captain Worthing's name to be cleared publicly, and," he paused significantly, "give your blessing to this match." "The match?" Lady Pemberton looked between Adrian and Catherine. "After everything—" "Because of everything," Poirot corrected. "These two young people have been caught in a web not of their making. Their parents' sins, their grandparents' silence, none of this is their burden to carry, unless you choose to make it so." Adrian crossed the room and took Catherine's hands. "Grandmère, I love her. I loved her before I knew any of this, and I love her still. Her mother tried to kill me, yes, but Catherine tried to stop her. She chose me over revenge. Isn't that worth something?" "And I chose truth over silence," Catherine added, meeting Lady Pemberton's eyes. "Something this family has struggled with for generations." The old woman was silent for a long moment. The clock ticked. Somewhere in the house, a servant dropped something with a distant clatter. Finally, Lady Pemberton spoke. "My son was a monster. I've known it, somewhere deep, for 23 years. I told myself it wasn't true, couldn't be true. But the lies, they've poisoned everything, haven't they? Even my relationship with you, Adrian, built on a foundation of silence. It's not too late, Grandmère." "Isn't it?" She laughed hollowly. "I'm 70 years old. My legacy is shame and secrets." "Your legacy," Poirot said gently, "is what you choose to make it now. The past cannot be undone, but the future is unwritten." Lady Pemberton looked at Catherine for a long moment. "Your mother killed my son. Part of me will always hate her for that." "I understand," Catherine said steadily. "But she had reason. God help me, she had reason. And you—" Lady Pemberton's voice broke. "You have your father's eyes. I see that now. James Worthing was a good man. I remember him from before, from the engagement party in 1914. Quiet, decent, watching Eleanor with such devotion while she only had eyes for Harold." "She loved him in the end," Catherine said. "The letter proves that. Whatever she felt for Harold Pemberton, she chose my father. And you chose my grandson." Lady Pemberton rose slowly, crossing to where the young couple stood. Perhaps that is how we break the cycle, not through revenge or silence, but through choosing love despite everything. She took Catherine's hands, her grip surprisingly strong. I will support the investigation. I will allow Captain Worthing's name to be cleared, and if you still wish to marry my grandson after everything this family has put you through, I will not stand in your way. Adrian embraced his grandmother, Catherine still held between them. For a moment, the three generations, Pemberton and Worthing, victim and perpetrator's kin, stood united. Inspector Japp cleared his throat. Very touching, but we still have legal matters to address. Miss Barton? The secretary stepped forward, trembling. I'll tell you everything, every detail of what Eleanor planned, what I did. I was wrong to help her, whatever my reasons. I accept the consequences. The courts will be lenient, I think, Poirot observed, given your cooperation and the unusual circumstances. As the police led Miss Barton away, Poirot gathered his hat and gloves. I recognized the familiar signs of a case concluded to his satisfaction. One final matter, he announced, the Dorrington crown. It should be returned to this family, but perhaps with an alteration. An alteration? Lady Pemberton asked. The hidden compartment that held Captain Worthing's letter. It should remain, but empty no longer. Place there a record of the truth, Harold's crimes, James's innocence, and the reconciliation of your families. Let future Pemberton brides know the full history. Let the crown teach, not conceal. Catherine smiled through fresh tears. A memorial and a warning. Précisément, mademoiselle. The sins of the fathers need not be inherited, but they must be remembered, lest they be repeated. Chapter 7. Justice Served. 3 weeks later, London had moved on to fresher scandals, as London always does. The Pemberton affair had blazed briefly through the society pages before being replaced by a duke's divorce and a politician's indiscretion. Such is the appetite of the public, insatiable but fleeting. Poirot and I sat in our comfortable Whitehaven mansion's flat, the autumn sun streaming through windows he had polished to his exacting standards. A letter lay open on the table between us, bearing the War Office seal. It is done, Poirot announced, setting down his tisane. Captain James Worthing has been officially exonerated. His record now reflects the truth, that he died attempting to expose corruption, murdered by a fellow officer he trusted. And Harold Pemberton? His military honors have been posthumously revoked. The record will show him as he was, embezzler, murderer, traitor to his regiment. Poirot's moustache twitched. Justice delayed, mon ami, but justice nonetheless. I picked up the morning paper, which carried a small notice on page 7. War Office clears, name of Indian Army officer after 23 years. Not front-page news, but news enough for those who mattered. What of the Weatherby brothers? I asked. Hugh and Martin face trial next month for conspiracy and receiving stolen funds. Their father's crimes cannot be prosecuted. The old man died in 1928, but they knowingly benefited from blood money. The courts will show some leniency given the passage of time, but their social position. Poirot made an eloquent gesture. It is finished. No club will receive them. No hostess will seat them. In society, that is a death of its own kind. And Miss Barton? Released on bond, pending trial. Lady Pemberton, in an unexpected act of grace, has provided for her mother's medical care. Miss Barton will face consequences, but not ruinous ones. She was a pawn, Hastings, moved by poverty and manipulation. The law recognizes degrees of culpability. I set down the paper. It seems everyone receives some measure of justice, except Eleanor Worthing herself. She died believing her revenge incomplete. Poirot was silent for a moment, his egg-shaped head tilted in contemplation. Did she, mon ami? I have thought much about this. Eleanor Worthing, Eleanor Vance as she became, spent 23 years planning that night. Every detail, every contingency. And yet... She sent the photograph to Lord Adrian before the ball. A photograph of friendship, of happier times. She instructed Miss Barton to protect Lady Pemberton from drinking. She revealed herself at the moment of the toast, ensuring Poirot would stop the supposed poisoning before any harm occurred. "You believe she never intended murder?" "I believe," Poirot said carefully, "that she intended revelation. The poison in her evening bag was real, her own escape. But Lord Adrian's wine? Harmless, as we discovered. She wanted him to know his father's sins, to feel the weight of inherited guilt. But she did not want him dead." "Then why the elaborate charade?" "Because drama, Hastings, is its own form of justice. Harold Pemberton destroyed her life with whispered lies, quiet manipulations, the slow poison of rumor. She repaid him with spectacle, his crimes exposed before 200 witnesses, his family's reputation shattered in a single night, his grandson forced to reckon with a legacy of blood. I considered this a strange kind of mercy. A mother's mercy, perhaps. Catherine loved Lord Adrian. Eleanor saw this, understood that killing him would destroy her daughter's happiness as surely as Harold destroyed hers. So she chose a middle path, revenge without murder, justice without complete destruction. And her own death? That was always the plan. She could not live in a world where her daughter married a Pemberton. But she could not bring herself to prevent that marriage through violence. So she removed herself, the final gesture of a woman torn between hatred and love. The doorbell rang. A moment later, our landlady admitted 2 visitors, Lord Adrian Pemberton and Catherine Worthing Ashford, for she had legally reclaimed her father's name. They made a handsome couple, I thought. Adrian's face had lost its haunted quality, and Catherine carried herself with new confidence. The shadows of their family's past had not disappeared, but they walked in sunshine now. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings." Adrian shook our hands warmly. "We came to thank you personally." "And to share news," Catherine added, her eyes bright. "The wedding will proceed next month. A small ceremony. Under the circumstances, neither of us wanted spectacle." "Very wise, mademoiselle, though I trust the Dorrington crown will make its appearance." Catherine smiled. "It will. We've followed your suggestion. The hidden compartment now contains a letter explaining everything. Future brides will know the crown's full history." "And Lady Pemberton?" I inquired. "Recovering?" Adrian said. "Slowly. Learning the full truth about father has been difficult. But she's determined to face it with dignity. She's even spoken of establishing a memorial for the officers father wronged, Sergeant Williams, Captain Worthing, others perhaps we don't know about." "A worthy gesture," Poirot approved. "The sins of the past cannot be erased, but they can be acknowledged. This is the beginning of wisdom." Catherine moved to the window, looking out at the bustling London street. "I still think about Mother, whether she found any peace at the end." "I believe she did, mademoiselle." Poirot joined her at the window. In that final moment, when Lord Adrian caught her as she fell, she looked at him and saw not an enemy, but a young man who reminded her of better days. She spoke of his heart being different from his father's. This was recognition, no? This was hope. Hope for us? Hope that the cycle could end. That hatred need not beget hatred forever. She gave you that gift, Catherine, the choice she never had. To love across the divide, to build instead of destroy. Adrian took Catherine's hand. "We intend to honor that. Whatever our family's histories, our future will be different." "Of that," Poirot said warmly, "I have no doubt." After they departed, I found myself in reflective mood. The case had touched something deeper than usual. Not merely crime and detection, but the long shadows cast by old sins, the way hatred could corrode a soul across decades. "Poirot," I ventured, "do you believe Eleanor Worthing was ultimately a villain or a victim?" He considered this carefully, smoothing his mustache with precise fingers. "She was both, Hastings. This is the tragedy. Harold Pemberton made her a victim of his betrayal, his violence, his lies, but she chose to become a villain in response. 23 years she nurtured that hatred, let it consume everything else. In the end, she could not separate herself from her revenge. A waste of a life. A warning, mon ami. The desire for vengeance, it is natural. When we are wounded, we wish to wound in return. but to build one's entire existence around that wound, to become the instrument of pain one despises. This is the trap Eleanor fell into. She became what she hated, a destroyer of families, a poisoner of futures. And yet she stopped short of murder, because somewhere, deep beneath the hatred, Eleanor Worthing still existed. The woman who loved, who bore a daughter, who remembered friendship and joy. That woman stayed her hand at the final moment. That woman sent the photograph, protected Lady Pemberton, and chose death rather than complete destruction. I nodded slowly. The crown jewel of her revenge was mercy in the end. Poetically expressed, Hastings. You surpass yourself. Poirot smiled, the expression softening his precise features. And this is why, despite everything, I feel not contempt for Eleanor Worthing, but compassion. She was broken by cruelty and spent her life trying to repair that break through more cruelty. Only at the end did she find another way. Too late for herself, but not for her daughter. And that, perhaps, is the true justice of this case. Not the courts, not the War Office investigations, not the social ruin of the Weatherbys, but Catherine and Adrian building something new from the wreckage of the old. I raised my teacup in mock salute. To new beginnings, then? To new beginnings, Poirot echoed. And to the hope that the sins of the fathers need not be visited upon the children, if the children choose wisely. Outside, the London afternoon continued its eternal bustle, indifferent to the dramas unfolding within its countless rooms. Somewhere, a wedding was being planned. Somewhere, a grave lay quiet. And somewhere, the Dorrington crown waited in its velvet case, its secrets finally spoken, its burden finally shared. The case of death wears a crown was closed. But the work of justice, I reflected, is never truly finished. It passes from generation to generation, each inheriting the task of choosing, hatred or love, destruction or creation, the endless cycle or the breaking of chains. Poirot, as if reading my thoughts, spoke once more. There is no greater crime, Hastings, than to kill the possibility of redemption. Harold Pemberton nearly did so. Eleanor Worthing nearly did so. But in the end, truth prevailed. And where there is truth, there is always hope. The little grey cells triumph again? Non, mon ami. Poirot's eyes were gentle. This time, it was the heart that triumphed. And that, I think, is the greater victory. And so concludes our tale of crowns and secrets, of sins inherited and futures reclaimed. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the shadows of the Pemberton legacy. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Tell us which moment struck deepest. And do subscribe, that you might join us for our next mystery. Until then, remember the words of Hercule Poirot. The truth, it is a crown that all may wear, if they have the courage to claim it. Bonne nuit, mes amis. Sweet dreams.